Good morning, everybody. You're welcome back again to this wonderful program that speaks to the counselor. Trust we all are good. Trust we all are good everywhere, both home and abroad. Good morning, good afternoon, some countries. Now, today, we're going into a fantastic topic, which is under the third range of counseling to social personal counseling. Social personal counseling. And I told us last week that it's a continuation of our mental health counseling we've been treating since last week. The benefit of this is just for us to understand better of how individual roles go with our day-to-day activities, even with our personal life, before going to a social environment out there to just display or to do our daily activities. So that is important for us to understand better. These are the things people are facing. These are the things to understand. Every one of us has one thing or the other disturbing us. And this is why this Speak to the Counselor program is holding every Friday. So today, we're going into personality disorder. What is personality disorder? So you'll be like personality, yes. That is a person's disorder, a person's ailment. That is, you're about to say, in every 5 minutes, people have their own 5 minutes of madness. People have their own ways of doing things. People have their own problem. People have their own wahala. Yes. That's why I say personality disorder. As an individual, I told us last week, we all have our own personality disorder, one way or the other. So today, personality disorder. When we talk about personality, what is personality disorder? Personality disorder is a kind of mental health condition characterized by persistent pattern of feelings, thoughts, behavior that deviates from cultural norms, which is normal norms, and causes significant distress or impairment. Let me come again. Personality disorder. This is a kind of mental health condition characterized by persistent feeling or persistent patterns of feelings, of thoughts, behaviors that deviates from cultural norms and causes significant distress or impairment. This can cause a very, very significant impairment or distress, or even, in fact, it causes a lot. Mental health personality, or let me say personality disorder, mental health counseling, mental health condition. Under it, we have personality disorder. So personality disorder on its own has its own risk, has its own effect on an individual, because, as I say, it's a mental health condition that is characterized by persistent patterns, different kind of patterns of feelings, of behaviors, of norms, of everything, and it deviates from normal way life, normal day-to-day activities, normal things that people are supposed to do. So it's very, very far different from it. So the causes are the very, very high risk, a very, very high risk of damaging different things on one's life. Now we have type of personality disorder. This is divided into three. I call it cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C. Cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C, because it's divided into three. It's categorized into three. So the first one, type of personality disorder, cluster A, I call it odd or eccentric. Odd or eccentric. And I will list this personality disorder for us today. God's willing, next week, I will explain it to us deeply, so as for us to understand the kind of personality disorder every one of us falls under. And I'll tell us the treatment for these personality disorders. So, you as an husband, your wife, you will not have personality disorder because of this program. You as a wife, you know your husband's personality disorder. Our parents, you will know the kind of personality disorders your children falls under, because you cannot tell me that your child, maybe you have 4 children or 4 children or 4 kids. You now tell me that the first one has borderline personality disorder. So definitely, if your firstborn is experiencing a borderline personality disorder, the rest must also experience borderline personality disorder. No, Do not get it wrong. Every individual has their own different personality disorder. And under this, when you know your personality disorder, for you, those out there that want to get married, you need to study your partner. So as for you, because two type of personality, the same personality disorder, is very, very rare for them to get married. So once you know your personality disorder and you know that of your partner, you will know the necessary step to take. And those in marriage, when you discover your personality disorder, you'll be able to speak out to the counselor and won't come in. Now, we have the cluster A personality disorder, which are called odd or eccentric. The first one under this is we have paranoid personality disorder. Paranoid personality disorder. We have schizoid personality disorder. We have schizophrenia personality disorder. Schizotypal personality disorder. And that these three personality disorder has a long way to go. So we have different kind of personality disorder. So this is the cluster A, the odd or the eccentric. The second one, which is cluster B, I call them dramatic or emotional personality disorder. Dramatic or emotional personality disorder. This is also serious and very, very important. I told us next week by God's grace, I will explain each personality disorder to everyone so as to understand. So people will ask, what is schizoid? What is schizophrenia? What is this? What is this? What is this? I will explain to us next week. I just want to tell us, to make us understand that personality disorder is real. Every individual God has created has his own personality disorder, has our own personality disorder. The cluster B, which I call dramatic or emotional disorder. The first one under this cluster B is we have borderline personality disorder. In terms of the name, borderline, they are never lively at all. So this borderline personality disorder is serious. In fact, it's common or mainly among females. The female word personality, this borderline personality disorder is common there. It's very, very rare before you see a man being bored. The second one is historic personality disorder, or I call it historian. That's when I call it historian personality disorder. That is the history, and there are some other things, maybe like from generation to generation, as in the personality disorder. The third one is, I call it narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder. I will explain to us next week. Then the last cluster, which is cluster C, I call it, under the cluster B personality disorder, we also have what we called antisocial personality disorder. This, in fact, I can explain better. Antisocial personality. You see, this antisocial personality, they don't want to, I call it dramatic or emotional. They fall into victim one way or the other. So they don't want to roll with people. They don't want to just move on people. They prefer to stay in there than to go in and have interest in social life. The cluster C, I call it anxious or fearful personality disorder. Anxious or fearful personality disorder. Other days we have avoidant personality, those that avoid people, avoidant personality disorder. The second one is dependent personality disorder. Dependent personality disorder. They feel that they are okay on their own. They don't need anybody. And the last one is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder. You see this kind of people, most especially if they are in need of attention, or they are eager that most of them, especially this happens in marriage, or those in relationship with courtship. This happens. These people fall under. They used to tell them that you feel insecure. They don't feel that they have their own security. They lack trust. They don't have trust at all. They're just managing it. So they don't have trust. Trust is very, very far from them. It's not in their dictionary. Those kind of people. So under this, what are the causes and the risk factors of this personality disorder? I want to tell you that there must be something that has caused personality disorder in the past. What's brought about this? What is the reason behind this? We have causes and risk factors of personality disorder. The first one here I say is genetic factor. Genetic factors. Family history can play a role. Family history. As I said, we have history personality disorders. Family from the generation to generation. So they might have they can play a role. Their history can play a role. I've watched a movie like that a woman was telling them that in your family history this has happened. So family role that family history can play a serious role in one's life. That's why the personality disorder will now come in. So they can just go for the avoidance, borderline, antisocial personality disorder. In fact, it might be schizoid personality disorder. It might be schizoid personality disorder. It can be schizophrenic personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder. Any of this disorder, this family history can fall under it. That is the genetic factor can fall under it. The second one is, I call it environmental factor. Causes of personality is environmental factor. You see under this environmental factor, in fact, it plays another major role in an individual's life. It plays a major role in an individual's life. Firstly, childhood trauma, abuse, or neglect can contribute to one's personality disorder. Let me say it again. Environmental factor can contribute to personality disorder. That is trauma, childhood trauma, abuse, neglect can contribute to personality disorder. A child that has experienced trauma, maybe a rape victim, maybe in terms of maybe the father and the mother are engaged or got themselves involved in domestic violence. So that kind of trauma or neglection, maybe they just neglect such child. So when such child is growing up, we call them sadists. That is when antisocial, borderline, this avoidant personality disorders comes in. So I want us to understand very, very, very well. So in one way or the other, you've neglected your child, or a child is being neglected, or trauma. That's why we say you speak to the counselor. That is the importance of speak to the counselor program. Another one is brain chemistry. Just as serious. Brain chemistry. This is, let me say, imbalance of neurotransmitters can affect personality development. Imbalance of neurotransmitters can affect personality development. That's the brain chemistry. When the brain is not functioning well, when the brain is not dispensing what it's supposed to dispense, when the brain is not assimilating, or when the brain is not getting what it's supposed to get, so the neurotransmitter will have problem and it will not contribute to where it's supposed to contribute to. That's why you will say, daughter. So neurotransmitter is having imbalance, it's not balanced at all. So that is where we need to come in. These are the causes of personality disorder. The first one is genetic. Family history can contribute to personality disorder. The second one is environmental factor, which is neglection, childhood trauma, and lots more. The last one is brain chemistry. That is the imbalance of neurotransmitter can contribute to this. So what are the symptoms of personality disorder? What are the symptoms of personality disorder? The first symptoms of personality disorder is difficulty with relationships. When we talk about difficulties in relationships, that is trouble forming and maintaining healthy relationship. Such person will just be causing trouble, constituting nuisance to the environment. That's what we say difficulty with relationship. These are the major symptoms of personality disorder. The second one is emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation. That is intense mood swings and emotional reactivities. I told us of a friend that she's always telling me she has mood swing, jare. These are the causes. These are the symptoms of personality disorder. Another one is impulsivity. Impulsive. When someone is impulsive, that is acting on impulse without consideration or consequence. And the last one is distorted self-image, unstable sense of self or self-esteem issue. I believe we all understand this. See you next week. I love you all. God bless you.